So I'm going to ask Daphne, do we have quorum? It looks like we do.
Yes, I believe we have 5 people present. Yep.
Oh, and thank you, Kari, for hopping on. Part of the reason that I want to make sure we have quorum is that if I count towards quorum, there is some changes that are happening where I will not have a be a voting member going forward to allow you guys to be part of that, you know, um, being a community-led committee, and so that allows for one more member of the community to be a part of this. So I want to make sure that you guys are okay. So if I'm more in observation, once the chair is selected, then we're in a good place. So as we get started, so sorry that's not on the agenda. So if I was out of order, my apologies in advance, but I want to make sure that we got through some logistics. I'm calling this meeting to order of the Community Development Authority. The time is past 5:30. And Daphne, can you assist me with roll call?
Yeah. Wakely,
I'm here.
Cole,
Present.
Oaks,
Here.
Sandoval,
Here.
Nelson,
Here.
and then Mayor Kuhn is present. Laura is absent and excused, and then I believe John Schaefer might be attending. We're still waiting on him.
Yes, he might be running. I did hear there's some other meetings in the city, so sometimes we're hopping from one to another. Thank you so much. Up next is approval of the minutes. I will go ahead and accept those. The agenda items, number 1, appointment of chair. And Daphne, can you assist with this section?
Yes, so do we have anyone who would like to nominate someone as chair, since Mayor Kuhn will be stepping down? Go ahead, sorry.
Hi, I would like to nominate Alder Katie Nelson, excuse me, as chair.
This is Cole. I will second that nomination.
Excellent. Any comments? Alder Nelson, will you accept that nomination?
It is my honor, and I'm humbled by the nomination, so thank you.
Are there any other nominations to consider? Any other nominations? Hearing none. I learned recently I'm supposed to ask that question, like some of those questions, a few times, so my apologies again, always learning. Hearing no others, all those in favor of approving Alder Nelson as the chair of CDA, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, Alder Nelson, would you like to take the gavel?
I will. Boom. Thank you. Agenda item number 2, discussion of tax increment district, TID, affordable housing extension, and combining CDA and workforce housing committee. And could I have Daphne help me with this one?
Yes, so this is basically an extension of the discussion that we had at the end of last year, that was joined with the Workforce Housing Commission. And so what you see on the screen right now is just a tentative timeline that the Workforce Housing Committee had discussed. And so January 31st, the end of this month, there will be a committee of the whole, where we'll kind of discuss the first, basically the first step of extending the TID and merging CDA and workforce housing with the entire city council. Then in April 1st, they'll have council's first review of the resolution, which was also included in this packet. April 15th would be the last day to pass that resolution. And then basically from April 15th until January of next year, the Workforce Housing Committee and the CDA will kind of work together on kind of coming up with those final recommendations that we had kind of discussed at that last meeting, to really see what the money will be spent on, how the CDA and workforce housing could either merge, or how the responsibilities will kind of be divided and such like that. So we'll have about 9-ish months, hopefully, to figure all of that out. And then April 7th of next year, 2026, will be when, we'll finally get all of those funds from extending TID 3. So, yeah.
So is the January 2026, is that a typo?
No, it is not. So we don't have just the exact date in January of next year.
Oh, okay, okay.
But yeah, that's kind of, January of this year is when we're gonna start that discussion, and then hopefully by January of next year.
So we're not
we'll-
deciding on the merging for a whole year?
Yeah.
Got it,
Yeah.
okay.
Hopefully we'll be able to, smooth out all of the bumps and things that we have
Perfect.
concerns with. Yeah. And so we'll have until January of next year. Yeah, Mayor Kuhn has her hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to share because there was some misunderstandings at the last meeting. I don't think that has any reflection on us or workforce housing. It was just sort of that timeline. So I've worked with city staff, so I'm just going to kind of walk this piece through because I'm sure Alder Nelson knows. You all might also know, but for our public who are watching, the money when it's released in April of 2026 for this project. Now, I'm pausing for a moment because we are acting like this is a definite. So that is something council will have to vote on. If you guys are supportive of it, that's awesome. You probably want to think about that statement, how you want to stay, not whether or not it's today, doesn't have to be right now, but if you're thinking about it or you're like, hey, sounds great, it's a great opportunity. That money is released in April of 26. And we do not have to spend it immediately. I think there was some misunderstanding that we only had 10 months to spend it and you should start today, like open up your pocketbook and go find a building to buy. That's actually not that's not the goal. The goal, they said when I was asking questions, like those logistics, is you can spend it from April of 26 throughout the rest of 26. It can even go a little bit beyond that. And that little bit beyond might not be like a day, but it might be still more months, half a year. So it's a lot of money. And I don't want us to feel like we have to have a plan today or in January. It's what Alder Nelson and Daphne were saying, which is we can take the next year to make that plan. Now, part of that could be what is our priorities, a top 3. It's still a heavy lift. And I liked how they said that we could take that whole year to work with workforce housing to come up with that plan. Because I have to tell you, when we were met together, I wasn't sure if workforce housing was planning to stay longer than a day. It was maybe the way I understood the conversation and the tone, and that might be on me. But I didn't want to rush this one-time opportunity. So I went to city staff and I sat there and said, let's make sure I understand. Because if I don't understand, how am I going to explain it to the public that we just spent $12 million or $9 million and we decided in a day? That doesn't seem right. That's a one-time thing. And so I hope that you come together and bring your thoughts and your ideas. And if you're not sure, it's okay because we are trying our best. And this is a community-led group, and your insights are needed, whether it's, focusing on, I think someone, might have been Alder Nelson, was talking to me about way forward. Maybe it was Abby. We've done some ARPA money towards, eviction prevention. We can think a little bit about that. We've done the NOAA project, which is naturally occurring affordable housing. We did some of ARPA money on that. Maybe we can replicate a little bit of that. But I know there's an interest about condos, multifamily units, single family home. I mean, there is a whole spread of ideas. Also, I am talking to someone to learn about rent to own. That's a program from like the 70s that I heard about. It probably still goes on in parts of America. Milwaukee is doing a pilot on that. So if it's a good discussion, I will happily pass the information to Alder Nelson so that you guys can learn about that. If there's anything that comes across my desk, I will be happy to send it over or pop in and give you a briefing on. But otherwise, I look forward to the things that you nurture and that you take to heart to prioritize. So thank you for your service in advance.
Madam Mayor, thank you for that update. That really helps me as well. Some of that timeline was confusing to me, obviously. Former Alder Cole, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think the mayor answered most of my question. But regarding this timeline, right, if that's where we're at with discussion right now. So the way, and Mayor Kuhn, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm understanding that we and our CDA and workforce housing work concurrently through this next year about how to use then the closure of TID 3 as
I-
well as the future of the two committees?
I think that if we think carefully about how we want to set the tone and the framework and the timeline, things like that, and how we work together, we can be a part of that framework building. And I say that very gently because I don't feel we should tell a different committee, like, you're going to do this and that, so this. But at the same time, the way it was approached last time of here we go and we're done, I don't think that was the envisioned. And I think it's what you said, which is we need to sit down and navigate what that framework is and how we can collaborate to optimize to serve the people of the city of Middleton. And again, it's probably because I was caught flat-footed, like and that's on me, right? I didn't realize a timeline was different. I thought we had the whole year to have this discussion, and this was just an intro. And I think that actually is what it is. So I'm glad you're asking that question because if and I'm saying this because there was another suggested merger in council recently, and it was something like, well, this committee didn't, wasn't there to object. So how do we know how they feel? And I have to tell you, when this came to us, I didn't object, but that was because I was caught flat-footed. I'm not saying I would object to the merger, but I would say, I know I'm not the chair, so Alder Nelson, I will, let you lead us. But what I would say is something like, hey, we look forward to working with you and collaborating. You have this expertise you've been gathering for the last year and a half on all these different projects. We would like to have those same briefings. If you could set that up and have one of your representatives there to navigate this and explain things in city language, and really have them, start that guiding process. And as for the merger, we are really defined by state statute, and I was just reading it right beforehand. So, Daphne, you might have to guide me a little bit on that piece. But it's 7 members, where workforce housing I think has maybe 10 members currently. So they can't be merged into our group. And someone had talked about a subcommittee. They might have to be an ad hoc helper group, during after we merge, just to stay on pace. But really, we either have to decide to remove ourselves so that we can absorb 1 or 2 of their folks, or 3, or we take on those duties. And so it's a heavy lift. This next year, I even at a year's pacing, it will be a heavy lift. And so I just want to make sure that we feel comfortable saying, hey, pump the brakes, which I think is what you're helping me say. Alder, yeah, my dear friend Jennifer, I'm like former Alder Cole, but my dear friend Jennifer, I think you're helping me say that publicly. I want them to pump the brakes and help us absorb this concept and the timeline and make sure we understand the breadth and depth of opportunities. Because if we just say, oh, I don't know, we can do these 12 things and staff go ahead, that's a heavy lift for staff then. And so if the work is already done and we just need time to absorb it, that's okay. We can do our homework, right? We can have them in as guest speakers and we can do it over the course of the 12 months. And then you guys can have that great dialogue over which ones do we prioritize, or do we give everybody, but some get small amounts and others get, larger portions. So that's a really great opportunity, because it will look at different things going on in the state and probably the Midwest, but then actually tie that budget line. The other thing that I asked in the meantime was for our finance director, Bill Burns, that when we talk about TIF in the future, like if we go to another joint meeting, that he attends that, so that he can direct us, especially, when we're talking about timelines, and especially if different committees have different understandings of what that timeline is, or what that money dollar amount release is, he can be there to clarify. Not that Daphne can't, but sometimes the guy with the checkbook is the final, can say that final say that, yes, Daphne is accurate, or yes, this is the timeline. And so making sure that all of staff is readily available for your committee. They would do it anyways, but I put it on that front burner saying, if this is the heavy lift for this committee for the next year, I want all hands on deck. So Jennifer, did that answer your question? Sorry. Okay.
I have a
pumping the
question
brakes.
that I want to pose to the group, but first I want to call on Quinn Wakely.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question about kind of the discussion that's going on here, and just kind of clarify, is this kind of an issue relating to statutory authority that the CDA would have versus workforce housing, in terms of if we merge? I know we talked about not everybody can come together because there's a number restriction, but in terms of what a CDA can do legally versus what a workforce housing committee can do legally, is that kind of one of the issues we're running into here?
I think that's a good question. Sorry, I'm getting over a cough, so my voice is a little shaky right now, but, yeah, basically statutorily, CDA has a lot more authority over, how to spend funds, how to spend, TIF funding. And so a lot of that specifically for this TID extension is for affordable housing. And so, usually a workforce housing committee is really just, like policy based. So we'll talk a lot about policy and ordinances and all of that, but a CDA has, the funding authority for it. And so, yeah, so the main question right now is, how are we going to supposedly merge these two committees? And so, because the CDA can only be 7 members, then, how would workforce housing fit into it? If it would be a subcommittee or a working group or something like that. So that is part of what we are discussing, over the course of this next year.
Okay. And if I'm reading some of the minutes correctly, there is still a question of, should we even join the committees together? Like they should remain separate. Okay.
And I think, Quinn, that was my next question.
Okay.
Are we wanting to merge these committees because of staff time and the commitment that the staff is needed to, run these many meetings? Because it seems like, and maybe I'm wrong here, but it seems like the more expertise from the workforce housing people could help us all along through a few years with this at least. But maybe the city staff are wanting to merge this for other reasons than just this TID closing. And Mayor, do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. I know that committee of the whole had wanted to merge some, and Alder Nelson, I probably need help on this part remembering, but at a committee of the whole, we had thought about ways to streamline processes and merge committees. And, one of them was recently, finance and personnel was the first. That was all alders that merged. It was reasonable because a lot of times if you approve a personnel action, it goes to finance and then they have to approve budgetarily. So this was all one swoop. The next one was, there was another one, I think, but then parks and youth, but that one, the council did not agree to. they felt passionate about that the youth commission needs to be its own, which is fine. It was, I think there was a misunderstanding that the mayor wanted it. I didn't ever ask for that to merge. I think I might have said, well, that makes sense if they're all young people, like if somebody asked me. It could be that this had come up as an idea and someone said, oh, that makes sense because that has, the housing piece. But I don't remember any staff being like, we got to do this and this is why, or this, and I don't remember any councilmen really leading it. So it could be still in the ethereal, like, is this make sense? Now, I bring this up because if it does merge, there is some value to that, but I think that it should occur if you all choose to do that. I think should occur slowly so that we can do this in an optimal manner for this rollout of this one-time spending. And because now I understand it starts in April of 26, goes throughout 26 into early 27 or mid 27, you guys might still want that workforce housing to be working on, how did the implementation go? What are we hearing back from, upgrades or purchases, or how is the city, they could be doing the analysis or the end user experience or working with the current NOAA to prepare us. So I think there's like some really interesting policy that they could be working on simultaneously while you work on the rollout of the payments or the selections of programs. So I think Alder Nelson is wise to ask this question. And I think at the same time, if you need time to ponder this, I think I am inspired by Jennifer's, encouragement of pausing or pumping the brakes, because I think it would be almost a twofold. Is if it's a yes, we're okay with merging, because it could be yes or no with merging. But if it's a yes, the next question is immediate within the year or within the 2 to 3 year plan. Because I would almost nudge us to say, like, long term sounds, that sounds interesting. I'm open minded to it. But we need your help for the next 2 years to lead up to implementation, to help us get resources in order, and then to help us understand how the implementation is rolling out and help us so that we have a robust experience. Now, you all might be like, nope, that's it. We're done. We're taking them in and peace. This is it. That is an option. But this is what, and I'm usually like a change agent kind of person, like, sounds great. We're going to streamlining. Yes. This would be the time I'd be like, hold up. There's so many moving parts that all hands on deck, I feel would be a best approach. And now I'll go quiet.
Well, I also don't see how any workforce housing policies are gonna be no longer needed once this project is finished. So I'm not sure if Quinn was first or Kari, so I'll let somebody speak whenever. Go ahead.
Okay. The question I had kind of related to, well, actually, first, I just want to say I agree a lot with what the mayor is saying about, pumping the brakes. I feel like that seems to be kind of a general theme coming from a couple of us about just, thinking about this being really intentional. I like how the mayor laid out, how is this going to affect, whatever plan we put together and how it's implemented, thinking about all of those pieces as we move forward. Kind of bringing it back to the start of what the mayor was talking about staffing. I'm just curious how this, not necessarily merging the committees, but kind of taking, embracing more of an affordable housing program would affect staffing resources for the city, given a lot of these programs can be very, legally burdensome. A lot of contracts to negotiate. I know we have a legal expert on staff, I think.
Can I jump in on that real
Yes, yeah.
fast? I'm so sorry. Just so you know, I put most recently, like Kelly is on CDA. I just added one person to workforce housing, and she is an attorney. 2 decades experience. She recently retired, so she has capacity. And I thought that that would reduce burden on staff. So that was my go. You're right on that, and on the breadth of research. So I've also connected to the U of Chicago, who's looking for intern opportunities for their grad students, and they do have housing policy. And so I have made that connection, and they will pay for that student to have an internship with us full time. So if selected, so I hear you. I don't have extra staff permanently, but I am trying everything I can to do what you're thinking. So keep going.
That's awesome. That kind of fills it in. I would also just give a shout out to the La Follette School at UW-Madison, as well as the Urban and Regional Planning Department at UW-Madison.
Yes, if you know anybody, I'm sure more than one intern would be well received. And yes, please, any connections, let them know we have a one-time amazing opportunity.
Awesome.
Kari, you're next.
Thanks. Well, Quinn and the mayor said most of what I was thinking. So just my question was just sort of about logistics, like finance and personnel meet jointly frequently. And would it reduce staff burden at all if during this time when it seems like we need more people, not fewer, to do a ton of work to get some of this going, if the workforce housing members are amenable to the idea and people think it's a good idea to keep that committee going, at least for some time, if we scheduled joint meetings and worked together closely, but retained our statutory identities or whatever, would that help staff burden at all? And
Yeah.
would it be efficient?
Kari, that's actually a great point, that I think workforce housing also discussed. They were very amenable to, meeting with you guys at your normal meeting times, to do joint meetings, throughout this year. Maybe not it. I know you guys have a lot of other things you take care of as well, so maybe it's not every meeting, every month, but every other month or so on. They would be welcome to meeting with you guys jointly throughout.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful idea. Anyone else have thoughts on what we're talking about tonight? It looks like this is just a discussion, so there's no
Yes.
need for any motions. Did we lose Jennifer, or is it just a few per screen?
Yeah, let me see.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, I'm
Hello.
still
There
here.
you are. No,
So-
I'm sorry. It's just that our screen doesn't show everyone at the
That's
same
okay.
time.
So I think at the last meeting and looking at the minutes and things, we talked about meeting together again at our meeting in February. So I think this would be a great conversation to from our joint meeting previously, this is a great through line to have at that next meeting in our joint meeting, correct?
Right. I'm open to a doodle poll if, this night doesn't work for workforce housing. We want to be amenable to whatever works for them too. I think I'm seeing some nodding. That's awesome. Okay, anything else on that number 2 discussion? All right, should we move on? Agenda item number 3 is the draft for a resolution for tax incremental district TID number 3, affordable housing extension. And I'm gonna let Daphne help out, but I think on the packet, it's page 14? No, this was an old one.
I have it on page
24. 20.
Yeah, well, so this is the resolution that workforce housing had drafted up for
Oh, 20.
just extending the TID itself. So outside of the merging of the two committees and all of that, this is just for extending the tax increment district number 3 for the extension. And so I remember during the last joint meeting, there was some discussion about this, be it further resolved, how detailed it was. And so included in the packet after were just some other examples from other communities in Wisconsin. And those were very general. Some of them were like 2 lines long. It was like, we'll just spend it on affordable housing, you know? So it could really be very broad, but workforce housing really liked how the Village of Shorewood had it laid out, where it basically said, you know, what we've been talking about, you know, the Shorewood Community Development Authority over the next 12 months will develop and implement a plan. So that's kind of basically what we've been talking about. And so we changed it to, you know, basically City of Middleton Community Development Authority over the next 12 months will develop a plan. And then working with, you know, the Dane County Regional Housing Strategy, they, you know, created this whole strategy a year or 2 ago. And so, you know, that really outlines a lot of really cool things that, you know, the CDA could just kind of take and use for, you know, our own purposes. And then to utilize at least 75% of the final increment to benefit affordable housing. And so basically they just changed it to be just much more broad and, you know, talking about developing a plan, you know, over the next 12 months.
Anyone have any observations or questions about that? Kari, go ahead.
I just have 2 annoying copy edit suggestions, and I don't know what the best way is to make those.
Go for it.
Just, yeah.
We're
Okay.
working on the draft right now.
I would propose removing the "and" after in the last "whereas" clause. I don't think that's usually there in these. And then the word "use" in the "be it further resolved" should be removed from where it is and inserted after and before any, and use any.
Sorry, what was that second?
Oh, I see. At that last second sentence.
Yeah,
of
move the
be
word
it-
"use" to "and use any remaining portion." I think that then is okay.
This one, okay,
That's all.
okay.
And the and after the last whereas?
I think so. I think,
Okay,
I don't know. Like I said, annoying.
oh, no, that makes sense to me. Yeah. Quinn, you have your hand up too. Go ahead.
I just wanted to kind of make a general statement that I like copy and paste. It's always a good way to start something, especially in this case. Not to say Shorewood is exactly a similar community, but it's a smaller community, so it's kind of smart to embrace what they're doing. And I like the language. I guess the only question I would have is, you know, is there something we're missing? Is there something that, say, City of Madison, or maybe that's too big, would put in their resolution as opposed to what Shorewood would, that we're missing? Otherwise, also, I like Carrie's comments as well.
I'm wondering if bringing someone in like Kurt Paulson would be a good idea for one of our meetings, just to pick his brain on what he thinks should go into all of this. Would that be a good idea?
Yeah,
I would definitely love that.
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, at the very least, I can just send this to him and ask him to provide his comments.
That
and
would
all
be
of
fantastic.
Yeah.
But if he wants to come in as well, we're
Yeah.
welcome to having him as our guest. Anybody else have anything on this draft? Any questions on the other examples?
No, I would just weigh in with, I thought Quinn had some really good thoughts of like making sure we're not in a we don't know what we don't know situation. That's a great thing.
Yeah, exactly. Quinn, go ahead.
Just a question about the language of just at least 75%. I know that's the statutory language. Is there a reason we wouldn't say, you know, why aren't we using 100%? Why are we not putting that in the language? Just kind of throwing that out there for discussion, or why we wouldn't do that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And actually, it also came up in workforce housing. A lot of the workforce housing committee members were also interested in saying, 85, 95, something like that. So that's definitely something I think the group can discuss at the next meeting too.
That sounds perfect. Jennifer, go right ahead.
I could see some benefit to just maintaining what is statutorily required to give us maximum flexibility for determination of future programming, because there may be some, and again, if this is allowable under the use of funds, but if we wanted to create some kind of grant funding programming that goes along with sustainability, that improves housing stock, right? If there's like, thinking of all the sustainability grants that the city seeks, if there's required matching funds, potentially if something towards improvement of housing stock, we may want to make sure that we aren't like pigeonholing ourselves into not having enough funds to be able to maybe help out with some of that stuff. Certainly like the goal would be to use as much as possible towards affordable housing, but just not like keeping our options open with that remaining 25%.
I think that's a really good thought. Anything else? This is, deep water for us. So keep asking any questions that you have that come up.
Yeah, and you're welcome to email me and I can, put you in touch with some workforce housing members too, if you guys have any more specific questions. Yeah, we're happy to help and happy to answer any questions as you guys are kind of dipping your toes into it.
Great. Anything else tonight? Well, thanks for making it easy on me. Oh, Quinn, did you have something else?
Yeah, it's kind of unrelated, but I kind of not. But just the question I asked way earlier about kind of statutory authority. I don't know if it's within the same statute as the CDA is. I'd just be curious if you could share the information or point me to it, Daphne, on statutory authority for workforce housing or information that's similar to that if it's not directly in statute, just so I can deepen my knowledge for our next meeting and
It's a really
understanding that.
It's a really good question.
Yeah, so workforce housing is just, I believe it's just our local ordinance that created the workforce housing committee. But I can send over that ordinance to you guys, so you can read over it. But yeah, any changes we make to workforce housing committee is at that city level. So
Okay.
I don't think we have any, state level or anything like that we have to strictly abide by. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because state
Thank you.
statute about CDAs and the requirement of cities to have the CDAs, within that statute, it identifies workforce housing as one of the tenants of a CDA. So that's my understanding of how we've also come to this dealing with the two committees is per statute, some of CDA authority is workforce housing and housing in general. So
Mayor Emily, go right ahead.
Yeah, just like Katie, I served on workforce housing. I think I was on it for a year and a half before running for council. And at that time, Kurt Paulson was the chair. Katie, I don't remember if or Alder Nelson, I don't remember if he was on your committee when you served, but it was a great experience. I heard you guys talk about him earlier. And so that's the only reason I feel very comfortable, completely agreeing with what Jennifer was talking about, because of that, it is just a city level. We would go through that ordinance as part of our onboarding packet at the time. And, it was what we used to do is only look at projects coming in and then supporting increasing supply, and it was almost a dry run for the plan commission. And we would ask strong questions, so that actually was good for developers because we do need more supply, whether they're single family homes, multi like townhome type structures or condos or apartments. but it was interesting. So I'm glad that you're asking these questions, and I'm glad they're offering to send it to you guys. But you know, you're in good hands with Alder Nelson as your chair. I am so happy with you as a group. You're asking profound questions. You're asking all the logistical things, and you're thinking through it. And I just feel like it's all in good hands. But yes, have Kurt in. Maybe he can start some of those moderating of ideas, or who to ask for speakers or topics. You know, because the one thing that strikes me is when he was the chair of workforce housing, he would have speakers come talk, but he would do it in a methodical way, just like a professor would, which is, I'm going to do this one, and then next month we're going to listen to so and so, or we're going to have two that time, and these are going to, you know, it's back to back, and then we'd have these robust conversations. So he might have some good suggestions for you guys, and I'm just glad you're talking about it and it's on your radar.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, here he is, this like renowned expert, and it would be silly for us to not let him at least take a pass through the resolution and see if we're missing anything. All right, anything else for that? Daphne, any thoughts? We're good?
No, I think that, yeah.
All right, there's nothing more on the agenda except to adjourn. It is 6:12. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night.
Yep,
Have a good one.
bye.
Thank you, Randy, for
Oh, yeah,
coming.
for sure, yeah.